Welcome to the May 8th Council Work Session. And our first item is the Yogi Tea Enterprise Zone Extension Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And Denny and Amanda will be making our presentation.
Good evening. Tonight we'll be discussing Yogi Tea, one of the most well-known tea companies in the United States. They lease space in Coburg, Springfield, and Eugene to make, store, and distribute their products. The company applied for a West Eugene Enterprise Zone property tax exemption on a new investment in West Eugene to consolidate the 3 locations into one space. Yogi Tea's application included a request for a 2-year extension of the standard 3 years for a total of 5 years. Council is asked to consider this request based on the additional conditions. I'll briefly discuss the company's background and then the additional conditions for the extension outlined in the resolution in your packet. The resolution would authorize the city manager to enter into a written agreement with the county and Yogi Tea for the 2-year extension. Yogi Tea is one of our region's most notable food manufacturers. The company makes over 60 tea blends, sourcing over 200 ingredients from 50 countries. They incorporate sustainability into all parts of their production process. Yogi Tea is a B Corporation certified for social and environmental performance, and all of its products have both USDA Organic and Rainforest Alliance certifications. Yogi Tea continues to grow at double digits. It's the #1 tea brand in natural markets and is the fastest growing seller in grocery stores. Over the past 3 years, Yogi Tea has hired 40 new employees, growing to a total workforce of 115. They offer their employees a robust benefits package, including health care for all family members, paid volunteer time, disability insurance, and up to 4 weeks of vacation time. With their new investment, they expect to hire over 15 new employees within the first year of their move. Yogi Tea is very active in the community. The company has a long-standing partnership with Pearl Buck Center, offering employment opportunities for disabled individuals in the community. Yogi Tea's Well Wishes program and cold weather samplers are both implemented with the assistance of the center. Last year, they paid over $140,000 for Pearl Buck services. Yogi Tea also partners with Food for Lane County, donating over 2.3 million servings of tea last year. The company and its employees also volunteer and participate in a number of community events. To efficiently meet their growing demand, the company decided to invest in the construction of a new $25 million facility in West Eugene. The 190,000 square foot facility will consolidate their 3 leased spaces to include manufacturing, warehouse, and office space and accommodate their anticipated growth. In addition, this will be the first LEED certified tea facility in the world. The development incorporates energy efficient lighting, water, and HVAC systems. This building will mean the continuation of Yogi Tea in our region, including the approximate $7 to $8 million in payroll spending each year. Yogi Tea submitted their Enterprise Zone application in May of 2016. They meet the qualifications for the 3-year exemption and will receive the exemption benefit as long as the company increases their workforce by 10%. It should also be noted that their application was submitted prior to Council's reinstating the program and Council's direction to revise the public benefit criteria. So Yogi Tea will be held to the current public benefit criteria for this exemption. Yogi Tea requested the 2-year extension, which would extend the tax exemption benefit to a total of 5 years. State statute allows businesses to request this extension, subject to approval by City Council and the Lane County Board of Commissioners. The extension is expected to provide an estimated $630,000 tax exemption in years 4 and 5. The city's share of this to the general fund is estimated at $280,000. In exchange, Yogi Tea would contribute $50,000 to youth employment programs at both 4J and Bethel school districts, provide 20 high school internships over the exemption period, and meet the state requirement for compensation. New employee compensation must be greater than or equal to 150% of the county's average wage, which equates to being equal or greater than $61,000. The city manager recommends approval of the resolution, given Yogi T's alignment with the Regional Prosperity Plan and our interest in supporting and growing our local food manufacturing sector. Yogi T is one of our region's largest. In addition, this investment adds to our manufacturing base, supports workforce development partnerships, one of the strategies of building a better Bethel, and helps us work toward our job creation goals. We're available for questions.
Great, thank you very much. And I have Emily in the queue. You're not raising your hand? Wow, Betty in the queue and Chris. Hey, take it away, Emily.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I have some questions. So we would lose $280,000 total if we did this. It's not per year, it's total.
That's the estimate for years 4 and 5 of the
Together?
exemption. Yes,
The
total.
City of Eugene's portion. Yeah.
Okay. And how much of that would go towards 4J? Don't we give 4J some money every year?
If you recall, there's in the enterprise zone, there's some public benefit criteria that could result in repayment of taxes depending on how you score, so to speak, on things like wages, benefits. So it isn't, companies that do really well as far as offer good benefits and pay well generally don't pay back part of their tax exemption, but if they do, some of that money is filtered to the school districts, but only in cases where they have to repay part of their tax exemption.
So my question is, would we lose money for 4J if we gave the extra 2 years?
Is your question whether or not the exemption extends to non-city entity jurisdictions taxes?
I guess that's what 4J is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess. The tax exemption covers taxes paid to all of the taxing districts.
Right.
But if you recall, the property taxes actually go to the state, not to 4J locally. So a tax exemption of this size would have very, very, very nominal impact, actual impact on the 4J Bethel school systems. In fact, if they are making a contribution, we'd assume they're doing much better off.
So the 50,000 is
gain for
more
them,
than
yes.
we would get otherwise. That's very helpful. Wouldn't they do this anyway? And what do we get if we give it to them? Do the extra criteria then count towards the first 3 years? I mean, I'm understanding what we get besides loss of property tax and 50,000 to 2 school districts.
So in the enterprise zone program, the standard 3 years exemption is yours by right. Mm-hmm. So they would get this 3-year exemption regardless. Mm-hmm. We do have some local criteria that they would have to meet. And again, if they don't meet all of that, they might have to repay some of it. But, you know, companies this size that pay well and offer good benefits, we would expect that they would pay very little to nothing maybe in a repayment, because this is one of those larger companies that typically do pretty well. So really, we're only talking about the 4th and 5th year. And you know, if you want to think about that as that $280,000 as an investment, the question I think you're asking is, what is the return on that investment? Right. And it's really what they would do for the schools. We're getting, you know, a $7 million payroll, which we would get, you know, we assume regardless. But it's those extra things that I think they're doing for the school. Longevity, hopefully that will keep them here longer if you know, that 5-year tax exemption is available to them. So I think our goal is to support the food sector, help them get here and be a really good member of our community for many, many, many years. And, you know, when they come off the tax rolls, most of that is real estate. So it's going to retain its value. So when they come on in year 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, all of that property taxes is going to come to the city. So for $280,000, that's how we kind of look at it, is what is the return to the community. And I think there are a lot of returns at this point.
I really like Yogi T and I support them and I want all this to happen. I'm just having a hard time figuring out what we get extra in the extra 2 years? Do the things we want for that also apply to the first 3 years? Or is that only if we give them the extra 2?
The things that apply to the extra 2 years are they have to meet that compensation requirement, which is
For the whole 5 years?
for the whole 5 years for those new employees, which is 150% compensation. And they also have to abide by the other conditions that they have proposed, which are the things that they have proposed to support youth training and internships and so forth. So the two things you get, I guess, are the wages and the education piece.
Thank you. You've sold me. I'll vote for it.
Okay, Betty?
Thank you. I will vote against this. I don't approve of these tax exemptions at all, but the questions, is $14 an hour considered a living wage now?
Depends on the family size, but for a household of one adult, it is.
If they were, okay. And you said up to 4 weeks vacation. I assume that means that some people get 4 weeks and others get 1 or 2, right?
I don't know the ins and outs.
When you say up to, that must mean that's a maximum, I assume. No, if they are giving some money to the, if they gave us the tax money that they should give us, we could give money to workforce development and the schools if we chose to. Or if there was something else that was more important, we could do that. But I disapprove of the tax exemptions anyway, and if they, not that it has nothing to do with whether they're a good company or not. I think everybody should pay taxes, and there are a lot of people who are paying taxes they can't really afford. And I would hope that would not determine whether they would stay here or not. I wouldn't think they'd close up and move away just because they didn't get an extra year of tax exemption. So I will be voting against it. Thank you.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, could you clarify something that I think there was a little confusion? When they get their 3-year exemption from the state, the only requirements that they have to follow are the state's requirements, right?
Yes, but if you recall, we do have that other public benefit criteria that companies have to meet in the 3-year.
Within the 3 year?
Well, yes.
Even if we don't grant the 2-year extension, they still have to meet our requirement?
Yes.
Okay. So if we grant the 2-year extension, then all the public benefit criteria that we defined, that whole list of points that you have to earn, they not only have to earn that in the 2 years, they also have to do that in the 3 years as well.
And that question's been asked before, and I don't remember what we concluded.
I thought it did. I thought when we grant the additional 2 years, then those criteria apply now to all 5 years. I think that's the way it was.
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to how we've written our public benefit criteria ordinance and whether or not it does capture the year 4 or 5.
Yeah, I thought it did. I mean, when I served on the committee, my recollection is that's the way we talked, that when you grant the 2 years, the conditions that we created now apply to all 5 years. And I think that's actually one of the payoffs is now for the whole 5 years of their exemption, they're abiding by the conditions that we set, which is not only just wages, but also health benefits, training, a whole series of employee supports, a whole number of things that I think are worth it. So that's part of the payoff, I think, as well. I had the opportunity, since they are residents of my ward, to tour their older facility, their original facility. I was incredibly impressed with their operation, and the new operation actually consolidates some of their plants they have in other cities. So we're actually becoming the center for this operation, which is really a plus for my ward and for Eugene in general. And I think by granting this and putting these conditions on them, they're already a good company. They already provide a lot of these, but this gives them the additional incentive to provide all the things that we would like to see. And on top of that, then they're proposing to support youth employment, and they're proposing to support Bethel School District and the wages. So I think if you're looking for trade-offs, I think this is a great way to encourage them to continue for the entire 5-year period to do all these things that we have defined as things we want, and they will continue to do them. So it's $280,000 for a couple of years, but to me, I think to get all the things in return that we've put in place for 5 years, I think it's a reasonable trade-off. So I would support it. I think they're good corporate citizens doing good work, and I think they should be recognized for that.
Greg?
Yes. Actually, Chris really teed it up well for us. I think that, this is one of those situations where the investment that we're making in terms of this tax exemption, this is what it is. It's an investment critically aligns with ballot measure 98 and the CTE programs that we resoundingly support throughout the state, but particularly here in Lane County and particularly with the Bethel School District. This is going to be a win-win for workforce development. A lot of our young people are unable to, find work coming right out of high school, and this is a company that potentially is going to, give us those kind of, good-paying jobs that will eventually evolve into career opportunities for young people here locally in the area. I think that, we have invested a lot in the food and beverage industry in this region, and particularly Lane County has led the way with that. And this is another investment that is a critical investment that we can make in the food and beverage industry and what we're trying to do to advance that industry in this region. And so, I've been very impressed with the operation. I know the relationships that they have built and are building with the Bethel School District and probably 4J as well, and other school districts in the area. And I think it's an excellent opportunity for us as, a city to be in partnership with a company like Yogi Tea, which again is a local company. We're not trying to attract somebody from outside the area to come into Eugene.
Great. And Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. There are other benefits, Emily, other than what was, to answer your question to the staff there, there are other benefits that are beyond what everyone has spoken about. The legislature, in its infinite wisdom, created this program because it had a couple of goals, it had several goals, but a couple that are also ours when it comes to economic development. A couple of our largest, our most chief goals are to lower unemployment and to increase median wage. So we want companies to hire more people and to pay them better. And so does the state. And so this agreement is, if you'll move ahead faster than you could have afforded to normally, if you'll move ahead and hire more people and pay them better and be, in all accounts, the model corporate citizen that we would like companies to be and behave in ways that support the community in ways that we think are the best case scenario, then we'll shoulder some of the load. We'll make it a little bit more affordable for you to do that sooner, because it also serves the community's goal of people making a higher wage and having lower unemployment faster than would be the case normally. So that's why I'll be voting in favor of this, because I think it accomplishes, other than the specific trade for dollar kind of thing, it accomplishes a larger community good, because it helps the entirety of the community when you see the ripple effects of that. So.
I just want to, Betty's second round, but I just wanted a clarification. So this question about the kind of public benefit that's coming back, whether it's 3 years or in the AIS that we got, it says $50,000 to schools, which would be $10,000 a year for 5 years, 5 for each of the school districts. So I'm assuming that's the answer to that question right there.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And then I actually wanted to support what Mike and Chris and Greg and have said around this, which is the premise of the enterprise zone is that we make it easier for a company here to expand and improve wages over time. And there's a little trade-off for that because we're wanting to be a climate in which that's possible and it's a overall public benefit. So I think it's great. So Betty.
Thank you. Timer's working part-time and part-time.
It is, I know. I should use my watch.
So I got to talk all night, but I don't want to.
I'm going to put my timer on.
I have no doubt that it's a good company, but people seem to be indicating that they wouldn't be a good company if they had to pay taxes, and I doubt that that's true, especially when they're already automatically getting 3 years. I doubt that they would suddenly say, well, we're not going to be good to our employees, and we're not going to be a good corporate citizen if we don't get the tax break. And I don't think that would be true, but whether it is or not, I don't believe in letting people not pay taxes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, another, Emily?
I just want to make absolutely sure I've got this clear. The big group of things that we as Eugene want them to do that aren't part of the state requirements, we will only get if we give them the extra 2 years.
Yeah, the compensation requirement, which is the 150% requirement, is only associated with the 2 years. And along with that requirement, which the state actually requires, the state allows us to negotiate other conditions associated with getting year 4 and 5. And they have come forward and said, in exchange for that 4th and 5th year, we would put $50,000 towards youth employment and mentorships, internships, I think 20 over the 5-year period. So what we're getting is that $50,000 for schools, what the community is getting, and the 20 internships that they committed to as part of that 4th and 5th year. That's not part of the regular tax exemption.
I don't think I'm making myself clear. That list that we did at the work session where it's local people, you get good benefits. I don't remember the list, but it was quite extensive. And, you got points for different parts to maintain that. So those are the things I'm asking about. Do they get those the first 3 years regardless of our extension of 2 years? Because that seems to me the biggest benefit to us, and if we don't need to add 2 years of lost property taxes to get that, then I'm seeing the only benefit is $14 an hour wages and $5,000 a year for 4J and some internships. It doesn't feel like a big payoff.
Well, Amanda can clarify the compensation. It's not, I don't think it's $14 an hour, but the public benefit criteria is all of those things that you talked about, that we talked about before. That's part of the standard 3-year tax exemption program. And then, so every company that uses the enterprise zone in Eugene is subject to that public benefit criteria, even if they only get 3 years. And if Amanda could clarify the wage.
Yeah, the 150% of the county average wage is $60,000 in annual salary. It includes non-monetary compensation for benefits, so it's more than $14 an hour.
For the people that are hired after they move.
Right, all the new.
Not the people before then.
Right.
The new.
I'm really hot, I said yes, but I didn't understand, that we're really not gaining very much. And so I'm not seeing the reason to do it.
Generally, this is a program that only a few companies actually can qualify for because very few can meet that threshold. It's not likely that only the new employees will meet a higher income. I mean, generally they're paying that wage across the organization. They're not going to pay only new employees more. So this is really catered towards companies that pay well, offer good benefits, and that's a kind of a difficult threshold in Eugene. There's been very few companies that have ever asked for this, much less received it, because it's actually a lot more difficult to get that 150% number in Eugene in the manufacturing sector. So I would just say this is a pretty good wage for Eugene, given where we are today.
And
So it's
we
not
would get
14.
that for the first 3 years if we did the 2 extra years, but not if we didn't do this.
We cannot require them as a condition of the tax exemption in the 3-year period to meet that threshold, only when we grant the 2-year extension. Yes.
Thank you. I think I finally got it.
It's complicated, I get it.
That was a
I just been doing it a long time, so.
good clarification. Mike?
Thank you. There's also the there but advantage or benefit here too. Current existing facility. I want to compare tax rates at present to future tax rates. So I'm going to ask, and the value of that increase over time in terms of property taxes and what comes to Eugene. So I'm going to say, I saw the number there of the other facility, the new stuff being 25 million in investments. Current valuation, do you know that?
For the new facility?
For the old existing facility, not the new one?
Well, I think the largest operation was actually in Springfield. And no, and it was leased facility.
What
so
I'm
it's
looking
not
to do is
something
try and demonstrate a way to show that in years 6, 7, 8, 9, and well beyond that, the value of what they're doing to consolidate here will bring in more property taxes and more revenue to the city over the long period of time by being a part of helping them grow for 2 years.
That is correct. And I mean, this is a new facility in Eugene. So the facilities in Coburg and Springfield have now been in Eugene. So we'll receive some benefit locally because we didn't have 25.
Will you help me monetize that number?
Well, you know, the year 4 or 5 is $280,000 to Eugene. Again, I mentioned most of the value is real estate. Sometimes for companies, it's a lot of equipment and it depreciates faster. But most of that 25 million, I think 18 or 19 million of it is actually the real estate. So we expect that to appreciate over time.
So we're going to have an additional 285,000 when they
That's
are
2 years. So it's, 140, whatever that number is.
a
per
year in years 6 until whenever. The alternative is they don't do it. If we don't approve them for years 4 and 5, one of the possibilities is they don't do the expansion, and we don't get the extra dollars in all of the off years. That's what I'm saying.
I just had to clarify.
You want to clarify, and then I'll let Chris go?
Unless I've got that wrong in somewhere.
So you think that the $280,000 they save in property tax, they're going to invest into an expansion that will bring us more jobs? We don't know what they're going to do with that $280,000 they don't pay, right?
I'm saying something different.
Okay, done.
I think maybe this will be helpful. I think a really important part of this program is if you look across the nation, across the Northwest, across Oregon, cities compete for this kind of investment. And you could argue we would all be better off if no one did that. But the reality is we have to be competitive if we want to retain the employers, especially this is a large employer for Eugene. This is one of our largest employers. In order to retain them, to help them, to allow them to expand, we have to be competitive. And the Enterprise Zone program helps us be competitive in a competitive landscape. So that's a really important part of this program. So when we do something to help a local company or to give them a 2-year extension, a big part of that is we want to be competitive because we want them to stay here and we want them to be here. And we want that $7 million payroll per year to stay in Eugene because that helps our economy and our prosperity. So the math is important, but the overall goal of keeping and retaining the companies that we have, because the reality is there are a lot of cities across the Northwest and in Oregon that would love to have that 150 jobs. So that's a big part of it that I think we always think about as far as why is this important? Why are we doing it for them? Because we want to keep them and we want to keep that investment here. So,
Chris?
Yeah, now I'm still confused about the terms. And I'm looking at the second page of the AIS, the paragraph at the top, the 2-year extension. The list of additional criteria, the one that we saw at the council, it's the point system where there's like 9 different criteria areas and all of that stuff. To get the standard 3-year exemption from the state, you don't have to meet any of those requirements.
Well, in Eugene, you do, because the state, the state legislation offers communities, and in this case, urban cities, which we are, offers us the opportunity to adopt local criteria that could be attached to the 3-year exemption. So years and years back, we adopted public benefit criteria per state statute that conditions the 3 years on that public benefit criteria. Every community doesn't do that. You can go to Springfield and get a standard 3-year exemption, and there is no public benefit criteria. We've elected to do that. So that's why we have that special, because it's not required by the state. We've elected to put it on the 3-year tax exemption.
So conceivably, a company could apply for the standard state 3-year exemption, and if they didn't meet our local criteria, they would not get the 3 years?
No, they would be subject to repayment of part of their tax exemption if they didn't meet that criteria.
So they still get a 3-year exemption and have to repay part of it?
That's correct. Up to a third is the way it's structured. Yeah, so no one would lose more than a third.
Okay, that's the part I was not clear on. And so then to get the other 2, they have to also meet the public benefit criteria.
Plus other conditions.
Plus other conditions, which we've talked about before. Okay. That's good. And that's the part where I was confused. It does apply for all 5 years, but it doesn't just come into effect if you ask for the extension. You have to do it all along. Okay. That's helpful. I think having those criteria are important, and I think abiding by them is important, so you don't have to repay part of that tax back. And so while it's a little different than what I originally thought it was, I still think it's still a reasonable request for the additional 2 years to ensure that we get 100% of that benefit, plus the additional stuff that they've offered. So to me, the trade-off is still to the benefit side of Eugene. It may not be as much as I thought it was before, but I still think it's, in terms of weighing, I still think Eugene gets the better part of the benefit, so I'm still supportive of it. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, are we ready to make a motion?
That's going to be on me. I just
That's on you.
Just now.
That's on you.
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
May I read yours,
Oh,
please?
yes, sir.
I'll have to second it, even though I don't want to.
Move to adopt Resolution 5191 for the 2-year exemption extension.
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor, opposed, 1, it passes. Thank you all, and thank you very much for clarifying and answering all our questions. Hey,
Let's get prepared here and get this out here.
Auditor's report.
right. Okay, next up, we'll have a little bit of movement, and we are receiving a report from our police auditor. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank
we
you
ready?
for having us.
Could you, just for the audience, introduce yourselves by
Yes, I
name?
will.
That'd be great.
I'm Mark Gissner, police auditor. To my immediate right is Beatrice Hernandez, our community engagement specialist and community engagement coordinator and translation specialist. And to her right is Leah Pitcher, our deputy city auditor. And in the audience is Vicki Cox, our senior program coordinator. So thank you for taking the time to hear our report. I want to thank the mayor and the councilors for your support, the community for their support. I'm blessed to have a really outstanding staff. And so we're going to try to accomplish a couple things today. First thing we're going to do is sort of go over the things that Beatrice has done in terms of community engagement, and then follow that up with a brief discussion about our annual report, and then take any questions that you might have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Beatrice to start the presentation on the community engagement strategy.
Thank you, Mark. So we're going to go through this brief PowerPoint slide that I created just to give you a recap of the things that I've been working on since August when I started working at the police auditor's office. So first of all, the goals of community outreach are, of course, to inform the community of our services. There are still many people in the community that don't know that our office exists, so primarily the goal is to get that information out to the community that still doesn't know the services that we provide. We also want to build a relationship of trust, not only between the community members and our office, but also with law enforcement. So keeping that transparency open and just informing the community that we're there and we're open throughout the entire process. It's also a great opportunity for people to ask questions and to voice opinions and receive answers immediately, especially when we do presentations in the community. It's a great opportunity to open that dialogue with community members who have concerns about what we do. So this next slide is sort of an example of an educational video that I have created. We're going to see here if it plays with audio. To explain the various ways that you can submit a complaint or commendation for Eugene Police Department employees at the City of Eugene Police Auditor's Office. The first way to submit a complaint or commendation is by walking into our office located at 800 Olive Street in downtown Eugene. We are conveniently located a couple of blocks from the Eugene's bus station. Our hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can also get in contact with our office by calling our phone number, which is 541-682-5016. If you choose to call, Vicki Cox, our Senior Program Coordinator, will ask you a series of questions to fully understand the incident that took place. If you call after hours, please leave a message and we will return your call as soon as possible. This is the most common form of receiving complaints at our office, given how fast, easy, and convenient it is. If you have access to a computer or have a smartphone, you can also submit a complaint electronically. When you go to our website and click on the option on the far left titled Submit a Police Complaint or Commendation, you can view an electronic form with English and Spanish options. Please include as much information and detail as you can about the incident. Lastly, our office provides brochures with information about our agency. In these brochures, there is a complaint/commendation form available to fill out. You can either mail this form to our office, drop it off in person, or scan and email it to us. Please remember that you are not required to know which policies were violated when submitting a complaint. If you ever have any questions about your rights or the policies that EPD employees must follow, give us a call. We are happy to help. Please share this information with your friends and family, and thank you for watching. That's just a brief example of short videos that we're creating so that when we establish our social media following, we can get that information out to the public, really quick and easy way to inform them of certain things that we do at our office. This slide just shows a few publications and interviews that we've had since I started my position. We've had an interview with KVAL explaining my new position and what we hope to accomplish. We also, Mark and I co-wrote a guest viewpoint on the Registered Guard, again, outlining the things that we hope to do with this new position at our office. We've also tried to follow social media and have people follow us. So I did complete a Facebook Live event with a local Spanish radio station, and that was a great opportunity for people to ask questions directly as I was doing the interview. So again, engaging the community in what information I was sharing. And then KLCC also has a Spanish hour on Sundays, I believe. So I was able to, again, be present there. And it was kind of interesting because they do it first in English and then in Spanish. So that double exposure, again, both to the Latino community and the English-speaking population. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is just a list of all of the new outreach materials that I have either updated or created. We have a frequently asked questions brochure, both in English and Spanish. Again, trying to reduce all the information that we have just to make it as quick and to the point as possible so that it's easy for community members to read and understand. We also have a online complaint form that now has a Spanish option. We have a Spanish option on our phone system, so if people need to leave a message, I can go and listen to that and then return their call as soon as possible. We also have created an anonymous survey, so if people are hesitant to provide their contact information, but they still want to share something that has happened in the community, that's a way to track how many people are experiencing things that might not be welcome to come forward, so they're not comfortable doing that. So we're going to start dispersing that information to local nonprofits to see how many we get back. There's a place to leave notes as well, so hearing more concerns about the community from people that might not be comfortable coming forward. We also have a new logo, which you can see right there. We have pens, tabling materials that we now ordered, also outdoor banners. A lot of people don't know exactly where our office is located, so now with that outdoor information, they can find us really quickly, so which is great. And these are some community events that we have been involved in. Of course, we always try to come to the monthly meetings like Police Commission, Human Rights Commission. Neighborhood associations was another thing that we really wanted to do, and now with the finalization of our annual report, I'm going to start reaching out again to all the neighborhood associations to see if they're interested in us presenting our annual report. Again, it's a great opportunity for community members to ask questions directly with all of our staff present there. We also did two fairly big events with the Latino population present. The mobile Mexican consulate came, and that was hundreds of individuals that were renewing their documentation. So it was a great opportunity when people were just waiting to be served to just go up to them and start a conversation about the services we provide. Current projects that we currently have, Mackenzie River Broadcasting has an all-Spanish radio station, 97.7 FM. We are currently running a 30-second PSA throughout the months of March through May, so this is the last month that we will be running that. And again, it's a quick little service announcement about the services we're providing. LTD, we have just finalized the advertisement that we're placing on their buses, so about half of their buses will display an advertisement for our office. And that's, those change, so the routes change on the buses, so a lot of exposure will result from that. We are also, again, growing our social media presence through Facebook and Twitter, and we are working on either creating a student guide. We want to reach to students, middle school and high school students. So we're debating going back and forth between doing a student guide or actually doing in classroom presentations. We have reached out to schools, and they all have school resource officers, and there's been some interest in maybe doing a joint presentation. That's still, we're still planning that, so we can't confirm that right now, but with conversation with them, we might in the future do joint presentations so that students learn both about what school resource officers do and then what our office provides if they need those services. So that we can cross off the annual report off of that list and the educational videos that, like the one that I showed you, I'm thinking of creating more that explain other aspects of what we do at our office. I want to continue reaching to local nonprofits, churches, schools, just finding any opportunity for us to present or be at other outreach events in the community so that members see us present wherever they go. And I would also like, in the future, we plan to do a forum or a panel discussion on our 2016 annual report. So that is, those are projects that we are working on in the future. And that is all I have for you. I am open to questions if you have any.
That's great. It's actually very exciting to hear about all of those things. I'm interested in your, I don't know, do I have anyone? I'm jumping in. Do I have anyone on the queue here? Greg? Okay. Anybody else? Mike? I just had one quick question first about the focus on students. Was there a particular reason for that? Did you identify that they needed outreach?
Do you want to answer that, Mark?
I think it's a group, well, that may not understand as well sort of that interaction that they may have with police and how our office might fit into that equation. They are close to their school resource officers, so making progress in terms of sort of standing alone and talking about what we would like to talk about is probably not as swift as we would like, but again, it's sort of we'll probably end up with some sort of coordinated effort. I think that is a compliment to the school resource officers, that the schools do think that they should be part of our presentation process, and so that's what we're working on now. And I think we just sort of live off our own experiences of what our understanding of policing was when we were in junior high and high school, and quite honestly, sometimes our most vulnerable populations in terms of interactions, bad interactions that might occur with police. We want to make sure that they have an understanding of how we work and how the police work and how that all involves the intersection with the students.
Right, great. Greg?
Yeah, a great presentation. I'm really happy that the police auditors followed through and on recommendations that the council has had in terms of increasing the outreach, establishing the position. I think this is excellent. And I'm really happy about this report. One piece I'll kind of cross over into my professional life as an educator is with U of O and with LCC and those student populations, particularly with international students who often have difficulty in communicating some of the issues that they may have or some of the interactions that may be misinterpreted with the police. How are you designing or developing outreach for those populations specifically? Because I know that we've got a lot of stuff because of the growing number of people that speak Spanish in our community, but there are other communities that are engaging the Eugene Springfield area who are speaking different languages, have different cultural paradigms. How are you doing outreach or planning to do outreach to those communities specifically? Also recognizing that the U of O has their own police department, but that people don't necessarily pay attention to those lines and tend to live all over the community and tend to engage in a variety of different areas in the community. So how are you approaching those challenges or those issues?
Well, I can say historically, the University of Oregon has been guarded in their interest in having us talk about some of the things that we've done. We haven't worked too much with LCC. We are limited in the other languages that exist in Eugene. And so we thought we'd start with the middle school and high school kids to get that involved. But in terms of, well, the city website has the translation thing at the bottom. That's Google Translation, I believe it is. I think that does as best as it could. And I know there's a lot of languages here. Historically, it's not a high contact point for our police in many of the other different languages. But certainly, I think it's actually a good idea to reach out more to the LCC students, and we'll certainly put that on our agenda. As I said, U of O, University of Oregon has been guarded in their interest in some of the things we've done. We have requested an opportunity to speak on campus, and so far the response is that we not speak on campus, but we're always certainly open for that opportunity.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the report very much. What you've detailed, there's an awful lot of work, so good job. I appreciate the efforts. You said one thing that perked my ears just for a minute here, and so I just wanted to kind of you go down this rabbit hole just for a minute and just ask a couple questions. One of the things you mentioned was anonymous reports, anonymous complaints. Here's my question, I suppose, to Mark. If you receive an anonymous complaint, how do you handle that differently than you would if you received a complaint that somebody signed or you had their name for?
Well, the majority, which is a few, of our anonymous complaints have come from, I believe, internally from Eugene Police Department. One of the goal or the objective of having the anonymous surveys at different organizations is we know, particularly in the current environment, that the immigrant population is concerned if they come forward and identify themselves to authorities and what might happen, just as if we were in a foreign country and something happened to us and who we might complain about and our level of confidence in whether there might be a process that is going to be fair to me or going to be unfair to me. So the goal of the anonymous survey at the community events that Beatrice is attending is just to sort of get a feel for the atmosphere of whether there is fear of our local police department, or if there's not fear of our local police department, but of different agencies, federal or state agencies. And so that's the purpose of that, and when people don't have to necessarily identify themselves. And so just sort of, again, getting sort of that gauge the atmosphere, because that's one of those macro goals, not necessarily a micro goal. So something over the long term where they can develop greater trust in their government, not just in the police, but in all sectors of the local Eugene government. Because that's something else that I think is really important in this position, is just have a feel and a faith that Eugene city government is not oppressive and that we are open to things that are of interest to people.
Thank you.
Chris?
Great presentation. Really appreciate all the work you've done. I mean, you really took what we asked you to do the last time we were here, and you really have run with it. And I think that's a great thing. Thinking about kind of the goals of the outreach and the engagement program, I'm thinking, do you really have kind of a couple of goals? One is among potential user populations, how to create greater awareness of how to use the system. That would be one goal. But a second goal would be within the general population, greater awareness of the auditor's office and what they do. And while they have some similar elements to them, they also have some different elements to them. And that was where I was getting at the thing with middle school and elementary school. I don't imagine we get a lot of complaints from elementary and middle school kids. So I would think they wouldn't fall into the how to use the auditor program for potential users. They would fall into the other category, which is increasing awareness and knowledge of what the program is and how it works. And so I'm trying to think, well, what would the message be for creating more awareness with a middle schooler? And that then said to me, yeah, you want to know that there's an auditor's office and what they do, but I think really the goal, the more valuable message would be how a middle schooler or an elementary schooler interacts with the public safety process. And that leads me to the auditor's office is in charge of creating greater engagement around the auditing process and the complaint process. So in order to be effective at delivering a message within the elementary and middle schools, it's obviously something you have to coordinate very closely with the resource officers. And that's why I'm glad you mentioned that you're working with the resource officers, because I see Chief Kern sitting in the back. It would be extremely valuable to the police department to also have a greater engagement at the middle and elementary school level. So as these kids get older, they're not afraid of cops. And it's not the auditor's job to do that communication. It's something that you would want to do together. So I think in the creating greater awareness of the auditor's office, that could coincide really closely with creating greater awareness and understanding of the police department. So there's a coordination opportunity there. And I would encourage exploring ways that your engagement could not only be for the auditor's office, but also with the police department as well. How you can find ways to do that, and that's really the awareness building side of the message. When you go into the user side, Potential users, I'm really pleased with the work that you've done. I mean, you've really worked to try to reach out and create resources that a potential user might want to have access to, whether it's online, telephone, language barriers, all the different barriers that could exist for a potential user. I think you've really given a lot of thought to, and that to me is particularly pleasing, because I think when we talked about outreach before, I think that was a significant component of it. Are people who want to be able to take advantage of the auditor's function able to find access and take advantage of that? And I think that's what you're trying to address with that piece, and I'm really pleased. I think that you're really making major strides in an effort, so kudos and thank you.
And we want to, a couple of things. It's middle school and high schoolers, and not so much elementary. I know in a personal experience, when I got to middle school, it seemed that a few students started more at-risk behavior. And so we want to make sure, again, we have that avenue. I think another thing, there was a fear expressed that we are out there marketing a complaint process, if you will. And in fact, what the experience has been is the complaints are down slightly. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're also able to triage a lot of these at an early stage, and that often occurs with Beatrice, with the Latino population, again, of people that don't understand the court system or don't understand the citation system or even the city system, and she's been extremely helpful in terms of triaging a lot of the things where, again, she's building trust in segments of the community. She's still very much involved at Central Latino. When the consulate office was there for the matricula cards, there was over 400 people, and Beatrice was part of that. And of course, if you haven't been to the Posada near the Christmas time, and I hope they have a bigger facility because I'm not big around crowds, you should attend that. It's really a lot of fun. But just our presence there, I think, was helpful for people.
Great.
Thank you. Emily?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the efforts for outreach to students and Spanish-speaking people. I'm a little bit concerned about the label potential user. It seems to imply that some people would have more reason to contact you, and I'm sure that's true, but I don't want it to look like the larger population is in need of your services. Embarrassingly enough, I didn't know what you were doing or anything about you. And actually, a while ago, I had a disturbing interaction, and I just sort of squelched it because I didn't want to contact the police department, but I didn't know about you. So I don't have the solution of where you might do the outreach, but the reports of a new outreach coordinator are great, but maybe there's some way to tell the whole population. And I really do like the idea of coordinating with education about EPD in general. But you're missing a little segment because I was in it. But thank you for your work.
Greg?
Yeah, one last thing, Mark and Beatrice. I want to say this publicly. I'm not getting the same calls and emails that I was getting before. So when I was getting before about outreach and contact and all of that from your office, it's disappeared. So I think you're doing the right stuff, and so keep up the good work.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Thank you. Betty?
I've mentioned this before, but I think going to neighborhood meetings is a good idea. And the neighborhood newsletters, I know some neighborhoods are doing really extensive newsletters these days, and with information about all sorts of things, and information about your office could be published in those newsletters. As for the schools, I think I've been asked to go to lots of schools over the years, and even the little kids have questions about police and about government. And they'll say, my dad did, or my uncle, or something. And I think it doesn't hurt to talk to them also, because they hear things from their parents and they talk to their parents. Well, I think it's good to start. And also, children need to know about government, all phases of it. That's all. Thank you.
And Beatrice really presses neighborhood associations, as you can all appreciate. There's a number of other issues that is also of value to them. So, but we do press the neighborhoods associations. But if you're competing against the changes on South Willamette, or you're competing against park maintenance or things like that, sometimes we might not always get on the marquee.
But the newsletter, you could probably get in their newsletters.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really excellent and very exciting to all of us. And then now we're on to the second part.
Glitch in our technology. Every year we do an annual report, and it's for those of you recently elected. It's typically far more voluminous in the past, and so we thought it would be better to be short and concise, and even with our PowerPoint slide, because I suspect that we may have some questions. Some of the things I'll sort of comment on while we're working on the technology. This is my 8th year here, and we've always gotten great service from Central Services and the execs. Glenn Klein has been invaluable for us in terms of helping us interpret our ordinance. My opinion is that one of the things where we've seen a significant shift is in the use of force. We've seen far greater accountability because of the requirement for sergeants to respond to the scenes of uses of force or other issues that could crop up later. I have seen a significant increase in contact between police and those suffering mental illness and or are in drug crisis. And we've seen the department shift to a more de-escalation type model. And so those are the things I think that I've noticed. I don't think the arrest numbers have changed that much. I do see officers spend more time engaging with people because, again, and I'm downtown. I'm on a corner where there's a significant amount of downtown activity, and I can see a difference in the type of people who are in the downtown area in terms of those suffering from mental health issues or drug issues. So I do appreciate the officers on the street, for the most part, being far more patient with people than they have in the past. Sometimes we hear that, it's said that this is the most scrutinized police department. It is not, probably not even in the state, but because of its size, it's small enough that we have an opportunity to look at a lot of things, but it's not too big where we don't have the opportunity to look at things. So if that's sort of considered a high degree of scrutiny, I suppose so. I think what we do offer that is second to none is balance in that scrutiny. And so that's one of the goals that we continue to try to achieve is balance and neutrality. And I think that we do a good job of doing that. And so now that we have our technology where we need it to be, this is a breakdown of the complaints that we get. Almost half are service complaints. Compared to when I arrived, there's far more instances, in my opinion, in which people are dissatisfied with response times and also dissatisfied with officer decisions at the scene of incidents. Why don't you arrest my cousin Billy? He punched me first. Well, no, Marvin punched me first, and there's not really any witnesses, and usually someone comes away upset by that. I know that in both types of situations, in most instances, officers try to do the best they can in that situation. And again, there's also a recognition that taking one person to jail in a confrontation of two people is probably going to lead to that person not being in jail very long. And so officers really do try to de-escalate these situations. And I think for the most part that they're buying into this de-escalation, that they're buying into trying not to get involved in a physical confrontation with others. So I'm pleased about that. I think in Leah's report, and I don't know if it's another slide or not, that there's more internally generated allegations, if you will. Again, when a supervisor has to respond to the scene of an incident or gets word of an incident, it's entered into the system immediately. And I really appreciate, in particular, the sergeants, for the most part, for recognizing that something is a problem or could be problematic, and we've been able to deal with that as well. A number of the inquiries, and it's the previous slide, but about 28%, is just simply the fact that, and incident reviews is simply just the fact that with the in-car video cameras, the body cameras, supervisors responding and writing reports, we're able to triage cases rather fairly early on and not immediately jump to an allegation of misconduct until we have a chance to see the film and read the reports. In almost every instance where we might have some questions, we're given almost immediate access to the ICV, the in-car video, the body cams, and unlike a lot of civilian agencies throughout the nation which don't get those materials at all or at a rather lengthy time frame, EPD is very responsive to our requests, usually within 24 hours that we are able to look at something. So we get a look-see in a fairly fresh period of time. The other thing I think that where we've had some bumps in the road is on respectful workplace issues, and it's just a few, and that revolve around internal interactions among employees, and both, I think, in a trust where sometimes employees come to us. I think when this was created back in 05, 06, 07, that probably wasn't conceptualized, and it's things that we're picking up, and they're complicated investigations, and we're hoping, again, that those are all, and where they should be, are in human resources. And I try to like to keep us out of that area, and when I'm 100% satisfied that we do get great investigations every time, then I'm hopeful that we'll be able to withdraw from some of those issues and let those be resolved by human resources. Okay, now ready. Make sure I got time for questions. So these are specific sustained allegations. I won't go into a number of them, the unsatisfactory performance. What you do have in the report, and which is online in the appendix, is a description of each case. We're not allowed to use names or any other identifying factors, but each case is described, so you can look at those in more detail if you're interested. Again, I appreciate the department being vigilant on the vehicle pursuit policy over the course of my 38 and a half years, give or take, in this business. A lot of innocent people perish or get seriously injured in those kinds of situations. So the department has reconfigured their high-speed chase into a pursuit policy where they're more strategic in terms of how they apprehend someone in those types of situations, as opposed to just turning it into a high-speed chase. And I really appreciate the shift in that paradigm in the department. This is annually, we cannot comment on individual disciplines, but we're asked to do a general overall documentation of the discipline. So this represents the discipline that occurred on allegations that were closed in 2016. Commendations are, we've also asked to do those because we received commendations as well as EPD. As the chart shows, the complaints are about steady. I think we were down about 6% last year. I think we're a little bit behind schedule, although it's getting warm. So more people are out, more people are having interactions with police officers. So that's our comparison on complaints and commendations. Okay. So I want to make sure that we had time for any questions that you might have. Again, there's a lot more detail in the annual report. There's every case is discussed, again, big enough where there's things going on, but small enough where we can sort of do a really in-depth study. Leah is working right now on the use of force study because that's also very, that is of interest for us as well, and that should be out fairly soon. So,
All right, thank you. I have Chris in the queue. Anybody else have a? Okay, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on something you brought up earlier that I noticed also in looking at the report, and I appreciate you providing the large numbers of tables of all of the different cases. I think that was very interesting. But the part that jumped out for me was the number of those specific cases that were brought up internally. And you mentioned that before, and I wanted to emphasize that again, that part of, at least for me, the benefit and the value of having an auditor's office is, yeah, to find when people are doing the wrong things and to find a way to remedy that. But even more than that was to have a positive influence on the culture of the police department and the community. And when you go from the system we had before to a system where officers within their own department are beginning to say, you know, I have a question about that. Maybe that wasn't quite the right way to do it, whether it's the sergeants or the officers or whatever, and they start bringing, you know, that to the auditor's office. When you start having a culture within the police department where they are actually bringing up their own issues to you and working them through, that says to me that there is a culture change going on with the police department. And not to say that the police department was bad before, but you want to have a culture that's open and transparent and is willing to look at itself. I mean, every organization needs to be able to look at itself. And I'm pleased to say, and I think a lot of that is within the department itself, but the department also working with the auditor's office has begun to create that culture that says, we look at ourselves, we see how we're doing, we want to be ever an improving and changing organization. And I just wanted to point that out again, that a lot of the cases you're dealing with are not folks outside the system saying you're bad boys and we need to kind of complain about it. It's people within their own department saying we want to do better. We want to do as good a job as we can. So I think that's both a compliment to you and also to the police department.
Well, and I think, to me, the two most important elements for a department to build trust in the community is that peer-to-peer scrutiny and that sergeant to subordinate scrutiny. And that is moving in the right direction, and I'm very pleased about that, because individual officers have a tremendous amount of power in this country. They can take our lives, they can use force on us, they can take away our freedom, even if they're less than truthful in a court case or anything like that. It's likely that they're to be believed over others. And so again, so having that tremendous power has tremendous responsibility. And I think every day the appreciation of that grows, and I hope that it continues.
Thank you.
Comments from anybody else?
Yeah,
Betty?
I just have one question. I have two questions. Sleeping on duty, where did that come from? Was somebody slumped over the steering wheel or something?
That was a non-sworn employee,
Oh. I see.
and if I say anything more, then it starts to identify who that person is. But that issue has been dealt with.
Okay. My real question is, are you satisfied with the reaction of the police department to the recommendations of the CRB?
I'm not sure in terms of the chief's final decision on a case.
I assume it would be the chief who would make the final decision, yes.
I think for the most part, we've had maybe two or three disagreements on issues, and those are the ones that are normally vetted with the CRB. I like to pick for the CRB or recommend to the CRB. They pick their own cases. Ones that you sort of feel on the fence on decisions, or ones where the chief and I might ultimately disagree on a final decision. The chief is very open to the feedback of the review board, but as the representative for the executive branch, he does get the final say. It's been rare. It's been 5 or less. I hope I'm persuasive. I'm certain that he hopes that he's persuasive, and I think the CRB has been receptive to the viewpoints and give a great perspective from the community, I think.
Thank you.
If I may, I want to add one thing to that. We have a member of the CRB who is a liaison to the police commission, as you all know. You appointed him. And so one other avenue for CRB feedback has been his input on policies based on the cases that we've reviewed at the CRB. You'll hear more about that for their report, so I don't want to take that over. But I have to say that he's worked really hard, and I've noticed that the police commission has been very welcoming to his input. So I think that's an effective part of the system.
Greg?
Yeah, you talked about internal facing complaints, and if I remember correctly, years ago that the human resource function, there was a separate human resource function for the police department as opposed to the rest of the city. Is that still the case?
I don't know if they have someone specifically assigned. One of the things that we have offered as a recommendation is more vigorous EEOC process through human resources, not just in each of the individual departments, because we've had to deal with a couple issues that were related to the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission type decisions. And so that's one of the things that I'm hopeful that human resources becomes more vigorous at, so that it doesn't end up in our shop. The ordinance does authorize employees, if they wish to come to us about those kinds of issues, but quite frankly, I have the expertise, but generally a police auditor's office doesn't have the expertise in EEOC. Internal Affairs doesn't have the expertise in EEOC. The expertise is in human resources, and we have to rely on them more to be that, to take over that leadership in that particular area.
So what I'm trying to get at is, is there a reason why there are more internal complaints coming your way instead of going through what would be the normal chain of command process, for the police department? So if you've got, police officer on police officer reporting a police officer for misconduct, something is broken somewhere that process is not occurring within the cycle of the department or within the internal operations of the city, because you are an external facing office, not an internal facing office. So I don't know if Chief Kearns has any input on that, or.
Well, I want to first say it's less than 10, maybe perhaps even less than 5, but because of the depth of them, they really consume a lot of work. And then, again, not having that investigative expertise within the department on those particular issues then makes it more cumbersome to do those types of investigations. I suppose in some instances, and it's not, I don't think it's necessarily a negative against the police department. I think it's more of a positive of us as people also trust us. And so that they can come forward to us and believe in us, whereas depending on who their supervisor is, and again, they have also reported to their supervisors as well. And so I think in a couple of cases we sort of got into the, we probably entered at the investigative stage, not the intake stage. But when I talk about these cases, again, I forget that it's a tremendous amount of work for us, but in terms of the raw numbers, it's pretty darn low. Yeah, 7. Okay, so yeah, Leah said 7. So all things considered, but honestly, we appreciate that people trust us to come to us if they so desire.
Any other comments? I just, I wanted to thank you, and I am kind of struck by just the basic data here, which seems to just sort of confirm the significance of your role in the community, that 46% of the work is service complaints, which seems to me that was kind of the point, that that was the role you should fulfill, and that's the work that mostly you're doing. So it's a kind of affirmation of how important the role is and how effective. And I really love the data that you have put together. And it's the first time out for me, so the only piece that's sort of missing for me is a little bit the framework is over the course of your 8 years of tenure, how has this changed over time? And that'd be kind of an interesting reflection for me in terms of, either service complaints or the nature of those complaints or anything else. But
yeah, we have certainly slotted into an ombudsman role, and Vicki and Leah and Beatrice did all the data analysis and things like that. They did a great job on the report. We triage a lot of issues involving, and more than 7, involving people who are suffering mental illness, and now we have the new ordinance with the dogs and the vests downtown, where at least with one customer we're triaging on a daily basis. And so working through that, and we'll just kind of see how the summer goes.
yeah, great. That'll be interesting to hear how that plays out over the summer months. So thank you very much. I think that we appreciate your time and your wonderful report. And for council, we have a couple of minutes. If there's an item of interest you want to bring up, I have slotted time also in the 7:30 meeting. Betty, did you have something in particular that you wanted to talk about?
A lot of things.
You have a lot of things. Do you want to take 5 minutes and pick one of them now, or before we break?
Sure. I still think we should have this at the beginning of the meeting, but
Probably so.
Okay, I wanted to mention the need for a public service officer that's well known to everybody. For a while, we had a public service officer who could either answer all questions or else find the answers. And I think that's a real need. We don't have that position anymore.
Was that a position in the city manager's office?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Go ahead. That predates.
And it was very helpful.
Okay.
It was helpful to refer people to that person instead of, because people are frustrated if they call and say, and nobody knows the answer, and they have to go from person to person before they can get an answer to their questions. Right. So I just wanted to mention that I think that's something we used to have that we need. I wanted to mention the park rules, no alcohol in the park. I think that is ridiculous. I think it's an elitist thing. People who can afford to rent a space can have alcohol. Just a family that wants to go and have a nice picnic with a bottle of wine wouldn't be able to do it. And I think that is absolutely wrong. And I don't know if we can do anything about that or not, but it is elitist. And There's nothing wrong with it. We're getting so puritanical. It's really upsetting. When C2 zoning, some people didn't vote on my request for a work session on C2 zoning, so I still think it's very important. I think most people don't know how much of the city is zoned C2 and what is permitted there. I think that if we have a work session on it, at least we'll reveal what it is and where it is, and we should discuss whether we should change the requirements or the possibilities. Like 10-story buildings next to, people don't know it exists until it's too late. And I really think I will try to put that 3 people voted for it, 2 people did not vote at all. Like somebody here maybe, but I think it's important for people to be aware of it before they're faced with something next to them. And I hope that we will reconsider that. And I have something here I can't read, but maybe I'll bring that. Oh, when are we going to get back to the nuisance thing? Summer's coming.
It's the nuisance thing is on the agenda.
How soon?
On the agenda in a couple of weeks.
Okay, but
It's
a lot of it happens in the summertime when
Right.
there's a fire danger.
It's on May 31st.
Okay,
Okay.
that's not soon enough, but thank you.
I know.
Okay,
It's-
that's all.
It's a struggle. Okay, thank you very much. Yes?
Can we take action on the consent calendar?
Sure. What a good idea. Okay.
Move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Next second.
Any discussion? Anything needs to come off? All right. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Passes.
Saved 1 minute.
Yeah.
May I ask my colleague, just because I'm one of those people she mentioned who didn't vote, knowing that not voting is in and of itself a vote with these items. If my colleague would be willing to answer, I'd be interested to know, is your concern and interest around C2 that we currently allow too much density in C2 and that we should alter this to allow less?
My concern is that people should be aware of what is allowed and that we should discuss whether what is allowed is correct or not. Because people get suddenly surprised to find that in their neighborhood there could be 10 stories. And we should think maybe we should change the requirements, maybe we should change it, maybe we should, at least we should be aware of it, and if we discuss it, the public will be more aware of it, because I was surprised at what was allowed on Willamette Street, for example. And people in my neighborhood were surprised at what's allowed at what they're calling Amazon Crossing. And there's a lot, it's all over town that there's that zoning, and I think we should be aware of it and whether it's right that the things that are allowed should be allowed.
I asked the question because in our work towards someday, maybe, approving Envision Eugene, we added no commercial land because there was adequate, just barely, the way commercial land is currently construed, but if we make sure that it can't be as high, then we will certainly need more. So that would be interesting.
If I may say, that's something we would discuss if we had a work session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So thank you for that. And I think we can talk about that in the context of Envision Eugene. We'll have at least 1, possibly 2. And so some of those issues can emerge in that conversation. And then if we need to take it farther, we can. So we will have an opportunity to talk about that kind of thing. All right, let's close. Meeting adjourned.